led me to where you are. Others who broke my heart, they were like northern stars.
Welcome to an exclusive look at country music royalty, Grammy-winning songwriter Marcus Hummon. Born to a diplomat father, Marcus roamed Italy, Africa, and beyond before conquering Nashville. From Williams College stages to the Bluebird Café, he penned timeless hits like the Chicks' Cowboy Take Me Away, Sara Evans' Born to Fly, and Rascal Flatts' Bless the Broken Road, earning a 2005 Grammy for Best Country Song. Collaborating with legends like Wynonna Judd, Tim McGraw, and Alabama, his lyrics shaped an era. A 2019 Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame inductee, he's also a multi-instrumentalist, opera composer with Surrender Road, Broadway creator of Warrior, and film scorer for the doc The Last Songwriter, featuring Garth Brooks and Jason Isbell. In this interview, Marcus reveals his global roots, hit-making secrets, and advice for aspiring songwriters. Stay tuned for the stories behind the songs. Now here's the Trot with Marcus. Sit back and enjoy.
Others who broke my heart, they were like northern stars, pointing me on.
What's your favorite thing to write, though? I mean, because you have such a broad brush. Is there anything favorite, or you just go, because if you're going to write a musical, that's completely different than sitting down and writing a country song.
Well, they do have some things in common. I mean, the building blocks of what I do and have done with my life is first and foremost a songwriter. I think, I come from songs, and I really sort of live. My thing is, I always say, it's not so much a vocation, but more of an avocation, or even a calling. That I think of songwriting is really kind of a way of life. And I read recently a little article on, Jason Isbell is probably one of our top, what I think of new. Of course, he's been around for a while, but I think that this generation is discovering a brilliant songwriter in a way that I think reflects more on how I grew up. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I think the greatest era of songwriting. And but he made a comment. He said, I'm just paraphrasing, but he said, I write songs to explain the world to myself. And I thought, well, fundamentally, that's it right there in a sense. Everything we do, everything we experience, everything we feel passes prismatically kind of through the glass of songs. And I think when I think of moving on into stuff like theater or technically opera, which is to say, doing an evening, an entire show that's all music, whatever form the various forms that I use, those are kind of the extension of the world of song to me. And so I'd say, that's probably first and foremost, and which gets into a larger, thought, which is, what is a song? And that's an ongoing, I'm 64 years old, and I'm still kind of discovering, and at times I'm just sort of mystified by what the process is like, how, what it is to sit at a piano morning after morning, or guitars, pick up a banjo, and then all of a sudden something begins to happen. And I still kind of live for that. Once I got started down that road, it was really kind of in college. It took over me. I wasn't in college for music. I didn't think I was going to go, and it didn't have a perception of myself as going to, being a professional musician. And then once it started to take over, it's like a virus, and I'm afraid it's still with me.
No, here's the thing. I believe that you're blessed usually at an early age. You're touched. You're given this gift that not everybody gets. And it doesn't matter what era or what music you play. If you've gotten that creativity, you can't explain it. I mean, and I understand what you're saying, because every time I start writing a song and I have it done and it's all finished, and I go, okay, where did that come from? How did that come about? And then you sit back and you go, okay, well, it came kind of from whatever. But I also believe that you're given it, and if you're given it, then you have the curse, which means it'll never go away. If you really love it, which we both do,
right?
Doesn't matter. You probably get one done, which we'll talk about your project in a second. But then you probably go, oh, wait a minute, I could do this other project, which is completely over here. But people want to pigeonhole. Okay, you wrote all these famous songs, but now you're doing an opera. What? I understand that, because it's like keeps you going because of the fact that you're doing something different all the time.
Yeah, it is interesting too, though, when in the world that I'm in, I do see some songwriters sort of my generation. Occasionally, I'm running into situations where they have stopped, and that's tough. It's tough to figure out. I mean, without naming any names, but like some folks that are quite close to, and I would say even a few folks I think are, some of the best songwriters really living in roots music anyway, and really slowing down to a halt or just calling it. And I'm not really sure when that's going to happen. I figure I'm probably not one of those guys, I guess. Although, I do understand that there, particularly if you get to the feeling, if you're an older writer, and if you begin to feel that what you're doing has no connection to popular culture, given that popular culture kind of birthed the songwriting experience that we think of when we think of rock and roll, blues. I mean, maybe, I don't know when it would have begun. But I think of it as, the last 75 years, for example. I mean, if I look at that.
Yeah.
And you feel like, well, you drift into this part of your life, and if you're writing for publishing companies, if you live in the Nashville culture is co-writing, right? And it's a fantastic thing. I do a lot of both. I write alone, and certainly all the theater and all that. But I grew up as a writer in this town, and the whole word for a third, consciousness, which is a very different thing. The idea that whoever's in the room, you don't word count, you don't count notes, you don't count, songs emerge magically and they emerge based on the energies that are there. And so everybody gets a straight split, and that creates a kind of a democratic, an egalitarian universe, where, and the best of us don't begrudge that. You look at that as, this is the bonding that made, this is the best thing about the Nashville experience as writers, right? But as you're in those rooms, and of course, gosh, you're so much older, and
I can only imagine, yeah.
The vast majority of the songs still like 90% of everything written in popular music in almost any genre is about love. And I mean, as in love, as in eros, and as in the age of 15 to about 25 or 7.
Right.
And that was a long damn time ago for me. and I've written, you think about, well, let's talk about unrequited love. Well, I've got hundreds, and so how to stay new, how to listen, how to find new things, but also, the joy too of experiencing when you find a young band, for example. There's this group I just started writing with called Cherry Vance, the Cherry Vance Band, and I knew the dad. It's a guy and 2 sisters, and they're kind of they're sort of based out of Oklahoma. They just this week in the Nashville scene were named as the second best new band in Nashville, which given the amount of music in Nashville, that's actually saying something. I didn't even know they were that well known. Even locally, right? Right. And I knew the young man I knew growing up because his dad is Zach Malloy, lead singer of the Nixons, and it was an Oklahoma band, and then songwriter. And he and we've written, but I've also done festivals, particularly the Oklahoma Festival, with him for many years. And I knew his other son was one of our son's best friends. So I just kind of seen him emerging. And then he started seeing Liv Haynes and then her sister Gigi, electric guitar, grunge meets folk meets, they're just as fresh as can be. And they've got that kind of fearless thing. Like they don't know from what, they don't know if they're doing something wrong, they wouldn't know anyway. And consequently, they're fearless, and but also extremely personable and kind of. Anyway, I find that still really interesting to me because I'm able to fit in because I'm always just generating new melodic and lyric ideas by nature, and they seem to want. I found a place in their lives. So that's still fun, but I definitely can see, occasionally when you run into an older songwriter, they'll be like, well, nobody cares anymore. And, that, and after a while that can settle in and become a kind of depression.
So to me, you're kind of a mentor type, even though you write great tunes and you're still writing stuff, the right way, I guess is the way to do things. Not that and if you've written enough songs, it's like, okay, it's kind of like being a producer.
Yeah.
You're sitting there and you're going like, okay, that's great, but have you ever thought about doing it this way? Not saying, okay, that really isn't going to work, but try this. But I want to go back to what you said earlier, though.
Yeah.
The people that don't want to write anymore. Is it because they are burnt? They can't sell their music. They don't think they can sell it. It's not worth it anymore. I mean, I'm just kind of curious. If I know when we get older, we kind of don't want to do certain things, but do you think that's any of it? They just don't want to fight the battle anymore?
Yeah, I do think I'm shifting where I can put some power in this thing. I do think, Rick, I think that can be part of it, and it's, hey, look, there's a legitimacy to it as well, because it is a different world. You get singles nowadays if you're writing and you're creating things, and they become streaming singles, even on major label acts, right? Mm-hmm. And if you fight that battle, however it is you do, however it is you move in the world. But if you have these successes, by and large, they're not going out and becoming terrestrial singles. So that's still the money for writers and for the publishing community. So we've been gutted in the age of streaming. That's the negative. The positive, of course, is that there's so much more access for artists. There's so many more possibilities out there than there were when I was coming up. There was one way to do it. I mean, you'd move to LA, New York, or Nashville, and you'd start playing, and you started playing live, period. Yep. And you would either try to engage labels to come hear you, or just by sheer osmosis or something, they would, if you were in the right place, the right person could just drift into a room, and your job was to build a local following. Your job was to make it where you were. And even if you're in Nashville, it's still a town with 17 universities in a 7-mile radius. So there's a lot of people, and they're just a lot of young people looking for music, as they still are. And so that was the only world that I knew. And then and then once you got into the spin of the major labels, then that was an odd creature too, because you have to become a kind of a corporate 5-year plan, and a lot of money's getting thrown at things. But if you don't start selling records right away, then you're dropped, and there's no development. There's not necessarily a long plan. And nowadays it is conceivable that you can be just ignored by record companies, and next thing you know, you're filling the Ryman when you're in town. Yeah,
because they don't want to deal with them. A lot of people I deal with,
a lot of people don't. You're right.
They have been on a label and they don't want to be on a label anymore.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's tough to make money with a label. I mean,
the royalties the splits are bigger. I mean, they're not very much anymore. And so a lot of people, to me, they want to be independent, and they go, I don't want to deal with them. I don't want them to tell me what to do. You still love to have their money.
Right. Yeah, that's the fun part. They can bankroll more production options. You can have maybe a string section on something, and it doesn't have to be a synth or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see that sometimes with people that upstream that, have these new deals where they have some financing, they got a label or they create a label, and after whatever you've paid out in a video or maybe a publicist, and whatever comes in, you're going a 50-50 split, and that's really not a bad way. That's not a bad business model. If you hit a lick, and knock out, if you get one of those multi-million stream things, that's like real money that you get to keep. And
Don't
then
you have your own label, or you did at one time, or you still do?
So right now, like the Songs for Emily project, I'm actually on my son's label. Okay. So my son Levi Hummon, who's done really great work, and he has a writing a buddy who's a writer producer and really one of the top mix guys right now too, named Eric Argis. Just did Colby Kelly's duet records, produced it, and very successful. But they started a small label, and they signed a young lady here in town, Ava Claire, who's very talented at Belmont, and then this Kira Leese out of LA, she just won some big TikTok award. But she's quite interesting, almost Fiona Apple-esque, and
I love her.
Really, real far out. Yeah. And then they brought me in, and it was, of course I'm Levi's dad, but I was starting to record these Emily Dickinson things again for my own, just because I wanted to, and Levi, felt that it had value, and before long we worked on a deal, and it's been a very interesting thing to have your son be your A&R director, and plus, and it's this age, so he's like constantly telling me, get content, give me some vertical content. And I remember when I first started out, I decided to make a pilgrimage to Emily Dickinson's homestead, and went to Amherst, and I was out there. I got there, drove in Western Mash. I got this rent-a-car. And I get there, and it's just before the last tour. It's like 5 o'clock. It's starting to rain. And I call Levi, and he's like, I don't care if it's raining. You get your ass out there, and you get me some footage. And, and we've had a lot of fun. And now we're on the first ballot for the Grammys, and that's fun. I mean, sure, we probably won't get it, but we won't get the second ballot. But but at least we got that far, and had some fun duets. Daryl Scott, my buddy, a wonderful duet with Mary Chapin Carpenter, and a recent one with Sara Evans. And that too was nominated in the first ballot, that song. But so it's been a long time since I've done a record, an actual record where it's just as an artist. I've done several musicals and a little opera in the last decade, which are like double albums, to be honest with you. They can be 25 song length kind of things. But it's different. It's a different experience when you decide to do a record. And again, maybe it's a generational thing. Like I come from the age of LPs, and, we like breathlessly go to the store and we'd buy the latest Cat Stevens, right? We'd look at the paintings and we'd read whatever he wrote, and, Joni Mitchell stuff. So I still kind of look at the album as, a real thing, not just a collection of singles, Got this show coming up for the label. We're going to do this big show, and Kira's flying in from LA, and I'll do some Emily stuff. But I'm also, I've been wanting to do, I haven't done, I'd like to do like a Rolling Stone for the audience. And I wonder, if people, that's such a famous song, sure that I'm assuming they will, but it's hard to explain like what that meant. But what I have to say of my own songs, there's 3 songs of mine that I pretty much have found that if I play in a room where people have anything to do with, say, country or kind of roots music, I haven't run into the wall of people know the songs. I mean, I'm grateful for that. They certainly don't know everything I've had recorded, but at all. But if I play "Bless the Broken Road," that's still happening. I'm like, that song is still living. It's still having a life in a way. And I've noticed that "Cowboy Take Me Away," also seems to be those two songs. I haven't yet run into that, like, what the hell's he doing? Or what I do get a lot is that people think I'm doing covers, but that's the old, that's the truth. That's the reality of the songwriting. That's the damn truth. Or I do, the other one is Born to Fly. I find Born to Fly still is something that seems to be remembered. And also just from a standpoint of royalties, like looking at the world of that, those songs are still they're doing well. They're fine. I keep thinking, Blessed Broken Road was written. I mean, that's 28 years old. I mean, the original, the first recording of that, of course, is the Dirt Band, because it was written, the writing part of it was Jeff Hanna and I, and when it was an opportunity to get on the Dirt Band.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the background on that. So it wasn't written for, I mean, it was many years till Rascal Flatts did it, and there was even an artist that did a single on country radio with it, Melody Crittenden on Asylum Records.
Yeah, I read about that. Yeah,
and I did the first piano version. And it was absolutely written on piano. I mean, I brought the verse and a chorus, the rough verse and a chorus to Jeff on piano. It's a very specific piano part. But my version, which, not that many people heard because nobody bought my record. When I was on the Columbia record, it was one of the great expensive demo sessions of all time, Because half that record got recorded and then like 3 or 4 songs were singles. But I couldn't get it. I mean, I couldn't get arrested at radio. Like, I think I read somewhere back in the day that it was like the entire state of Texas like never played anything of mine. And I have family in Texas.
But I sit here and listen to the story about this song, and when did you realize? I mean, obviously you wrote it co-wrote it, and then when did you realize that? Oh my, this thing's running. It's not just walking or crawling. It's running. And now you're here years later. And I always said, if I could just write one song that everybody would, you're playing Paul and Simon. If I could write a bridge over troubled water, just one. That's all I need is one. And just have one of those that play, and that tune you have, just like you said, and the other two you mentioned, it's still got it. And did you ever have the feeling that when you finished it up, that would ever be that you'd be talking about it almost 30 years later?
No, but I don't know. I don't think. No, I mean, I remember this a long time ago, but I do remember thinking both Jeff and I thought it was really good. But I do remember that when I first handed in, and the demo was just me on a piano. I remember my publisher at that time was BMG, and my publisher, I remember saying something to the effect of, it's nice, but it's a little too gospel-y. And in that era, so this would have been like 91 or 2 or whatever. Like you didn't want a song that was CCM. Like that wasn't cool, unless it was. But I mean, it was like it. And the funny thing was just the genesis of the song was really about a conversation with Bobby Boyd, in a bar. And he was talking about divorce and pretty country stuff, in a way. And I think just having the word God in it, God bless,
yeah.
And I remember being a little bit like, I was a little bummed that was the take on it, because but then I also remember that when they cut it, when the Dirt Band cut it on the album acoustic, there was piano in it, but it wasn't quite as central as I'd kind of hoped. And I love Bob's voice, but I particularly love Jeff, I wrote with, and I was kind of thinking he would sing it. And so I had sort of mixed feelings, but I also felt like, well, that's a success. There it is. It's over. That's done. That's it. I think it was really Jeff later on who realized that they were playing that song with a Dirt Band, and he was noticing that people, without it being a single, without it having had a lot of exposure, he was noticing that there was a connection in audiences, and there was something about the song. And of course, I think that we inadvertently had kind of tapped into the zeitgeist of how we love today. We love later. You know, as young people, by the time we're 25, you know, we've probably lived in college with somebody. We've had, you know, and then more often there are people who are getting divorced, then remarried, or second marriages, etc. Yep. And in that sense, it's very, you know, I mean, I couldn't tell you the number of people. It was just last night I was playing the show. I did it, and probably 8 people came up and said it was their wedding song. And I know, too, from even before, because my wife's a minister, and even before it ever became a hit, I was asked to play that at weddings that she presided over and over again. And so it did become a thing between Jeff and I. We began to believe, I think by the late 90s, that it needed to have this, it needed a penultimate experience. And we thought maybe it would be, Bette Midler was looking at it at one time. And I think a lot of artists were looking at it. But the Flatts guys, the Rascal Flatts guys, that was kind of curious, because I was writing with them for their first couple albums. And I had, I guess, 3 cuts or whatever. And I remember the guys would say to me, they knew the song. And again, this was a testament to the song. It was just sort of something that for some reason, even before it was a big Grammy winner and all that, it was like people kind of knew it. And they were like, we're going to do that song someday. And I'd always be like, yeah, you know what? Stop telling me that you're going to do the damn song. Just do the song.
Do it. Yeah, just do it.
I don't want to hear about it anymore. Stop telling me that you really dig it, you know?
Yeah.
And then that third record, which is the record that ended their time at Lyric Street, you know, they were kind of about to have a pretty famous breakup with their management. They had one of the first 360-degree kind of relationships in Nashville. Now it's very common, of course. But at the time, and they were about to just, you know, that was about to break up. They had their album. They were the hottest band in country music, and they put their first single out. It was a song called "Feels Like Today," and I love that song. By the way, it's an English writer. I can't think of his name now, but it went to like, I don't know, 12 or 15, which for them was like, that was a huge disappointment, and was kind of part of the whole experience of that their time at Lyric Street and with this management producing team was ending. And I think there was, what I was told was that there was a possibility they would can the entire record. Of course, that record subsequently became their biggest record. But they didn't know that, so they went back in, they said, well, let's just do one more song. Let's go back and cut one more song. Because we need something that kind of, you know, hit that, like inaugurate, and then you hit all the various rhythms. We don't have that first single. And they decided to try this song, Bless the Broken Road. And I remember I was out of the country and didn't know about this stuff. And when I got back in the country, I went over to BMG and they said, have you heard? Have you heard this damn thing? And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know?
Yeah.
And I it was one of those things too, like songwriters often talk about, like, if you hear your song, you pull over the side of the road, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is absolutely true for me with Bless the Broken Road. The first time I heard it, I thought it was so good. Gary, I mean, everything about it, like, you know, a lot of times their production for Rascal Flatts through the years has been, you know, heavy, layered, particularly when, you know, particularly in a way when they got with Dan Huff, because he's so good at that.
Yeah.
But that's not really, that's not what happened with Bless the Broken Road. You can hear the piano, you hear the one electric, the acoustic guitar. There's great space. There's a lot of emptiness. It's very vibey. It pockets in a certain way. Gary, you know, sang the living, you know what, out of it, and also didn't oversing it. I mean, he's capable of crazy gymnastics vocally, but that doesn't lend itself to a song like Bless the Broken Road. Right. That song, Bless the Broken Road, it's built on a melody. It's built to be sung in a different, you know, in a little more honest fashion. And anyway, I have to say, you know, and it's not true. It's true that sometimes you hear stuff that people record of yours and you're always happy for it. You're always grateful.
Oh, sure.
But you don't always dig it.
No, mean, I'm sure you don't. That's true.
You lie about it, but that doesn't mean you're gonna.
Well, it's kind of like selling your house and driving by later, and you're like, "What did they do that to my house for?" And you're like, So I can understand, because it's like, you're right. I think the difference, though, is we grew up in an era that if you heard your song on the radio, it was something else.
Oh my God,
it was something else. And I've told this story a lot, but not a lot. But I interviewed a young lady out of Australia a couple of years ago, and she was she's a pop singer, very young, under 18. And she was in the car, and I remember we were talking. It's always tomorrow over in Australia when you're talking to her. Right. So I said to her, she goes, "Yeah, they played my song on the radio the other day." And I said, "How was that? What was it like?" And she goes, "Well, I normally have my phone plugged in on Bluetooth. It was like listening to my phone on Bluetooth. It meant nothing to her. I mean, it wasn't that big a deal to her." When did you start liking Emily Dickinson? When was that you started listening to reading her poems?
Well, I've been aware of, Emily Dickinson poetry since, I don't know, I can't remember so much in high school, but in college I wrote poetry I took poetry classes. I wrote for the review there, the literary review at Williams College. And so that's part of my life, was just being interested in poetry. But what happened was about two and a half years ago, a friend of mine who used to run Shakespeare in the Park. She ran Nashville Shakespeare for a long time, and just very successfully. And she retired from that work and decided to do a one-woman show, an Emily Dickinson show called I Dwell in Possibility. Now, there is a very famous one-woman Emily Dickinson show that won the Tony back in the 70s called the Belle of Amherst. And and I actually never saw it. She did it in Memphis. She didn't do it in Nashville, and I just didn't. I can't remember why. But she called me and she said, "I'd like to sing a song in the show," and I'd like to sing the lines for "I Dwell in Possibility," which is this beautiful poem that Emily wrote about. I think it's about how, I dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose, more numerous of windows, superior for doors, for chambers as the cedars, impregnable of eye, and for an everlasting roof the gambrels of the sky, of visitors the fairest, and for occupation this, spreading wide my narrow hands to gather paradise. And so for her, poetry is the highest form. Mm-hmm. For Emily, I believe that's what she's even higher than prose. And she has enormous respect for prose, huge reader in her lifetime. So I did put that song to music. Initially, I just did it as a solo piece with kind of my choral thing at the end. And she liked it. Apparently, she sang it, used the tracks. She did like TV tracks or whatever. And that was kind of the end of it. But it ignited something in me. And as I do on various things that are historical, like I've had 10 years of working on Frederick Douglass. And of course, there's a lot to read there because he wrote so much. But with Emily, there's a lot to read too, because there's 1,800 poems. There's also 1,000 or so letters that survived. And then there's a sort of army of academia that's written about Emily because, partly because of what an odd situation it is, how she came to be understood and as a poet and sort of out of nowhere, and all the questions about her life and the end of her life, the intense. She was an intense recluse. The last 15 years of her life really never left her home and spoke to people from behind doors. And there's been an enormous amount of speculation about her potential love life or lack thereof, about the possibility of various forms of various diseases she might have had, mental agoraphobia, a variety of things. I even have written a play called The Oculist, and where I have found something kind of interesting about the 2 years just before she she shut herself off entirely. She spent time in Boston and believed that she was going blind. She had an irritation in her retinas. And so I've done some research and kind of come up with a story. But back to what once you get once the rabbit hole, once you're down there, and then you start reading, and I have family that lives 10 miles from Amherst. My godson does, and he and his wife are educators at Deerfield Academy. And I suddenly had access to the suggested reading from some different academicians in that part of the world, and so I'm reading and reading. And one thing led to another, again, I decided to I'd start with one more. And I went to this poem called I Never Saw More. By the way, her poems, Emily didn't have titles. So she had a lot of different ideas about language and about literary form. And the very few people that did know she was writing, nobody knew how precocious she was. Or prolific. Nobody knew. But even the one editor that she reached out to, her couple readers, possibly her lover or sister-in-law, she allowed. I think she had something like 250 poems of 1,800, mind you. So in reading, of course, I had not read all 1,800. I could be honest and be, just transparent about that.
That's a lot.
But I've gotten pretty close to about, I'd say 200 or 250, and then, and I began, I kind of fell in love with certain poems, that'd be the best way to put it. And then just decided, all right, I'm going to do some music. I'm going to make this happen, and I had a couple of musicians. I play a bunch of instruments, but I have a couple of pals who are, really particularly gifted. So just it kind of paid for it myself and got some help from some different places, and was just very free to do it and do it just exactly as I wanted to do it. And in the meantime, Levi he wanted to start this label. So one thing led to another. And then we decided, well, let's go ahead and let's do a record. And I started recording a bunch of them, 4 or 5. And I happened to reach out to Mary Chapin Carpenter. And this is also kind of the reason for finishing. Sometimes, like when you're working on something, the universe gives you some, you get some input,
right?
Something will suddenly, you're running into something that has to do with Emily Dickinson and it's that kind of thing. And I had noticed Mary Chapin Carpenter and I were just kind of went back and forth on Instagram. One is I'm a fan of hers, but she also, I think, became interested in, she's a DC person like myself, and she knew that I had done this Frederick Douglass show at Arena Stage, which is the big theater, it's a huge regional theater right there by the Lincoln Monument. And so she was very aware of that, and she was following it, and she was commenting, and then I was kind of responding, and I noticed that it turns out I found out that she's an Emily Dickinson devotee, right? And and the truth is, there's like an army of people out there. They're all over the world, but it's an intense group. And so I just figured, what the heck? And I said, I reached out to her. I said, would you consider doing a duet with me for this project? And she just got back to me like right away and said, absolutely, and just offered her. She was even like, would it be okay if you, paid for the studio for my vocal? Like, no, she didn't want a contract. She didn't want splits. She just wanted to sing the song.
She liked Emily that much. Yeah.
She liked Emily that much. And we talked about different poems, and I think it came down to Hope is the Thing with Feathers. But eventually we decided, let's do I Dwell in Possibility as if we're speaking to each other. Let's do it as if we're in, and then in the end, let's do an almost choral thing with our voices. And even though we're not going to be in the same place, because I was sending her tracks and she was sending me things back, we can organize this. And that was such a great experience. And she wrote, she was so gracious. She wrote some, she did some stuff for the press. There was some press around it. And it kind of made me feel like, again, like the whole universe thing, that the universe is saying, yeah,
it's meant to be.
This is a good idea. So keep going. So, and it's kind of like, so what's next? Yeah. So that's how that all. I know that's kind of long-winded, but
you never know where you get your creativity. You never know where it's going to come from. Tell me a little about your performing now.
Well, I don't really tour in the.
Well, I know, but you perform right there at home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
quite a bit. And then I'll do the occasional gig. A couple weeks from now, I'll be doing a show with Tony Arata, who wrote The Dance, and we're going to be at the Charlotte. I just got a gig, Charlotte Yacht Club or something, and it's going to be great. It'll be super fun. Tony's one of the most wonderful songwriters and Hall of Fame guy, and but yeah, I'll do some of those kinds of things. I haven't done a proper tour in many years. I kind of stopped that after the last semi-traditional record deal I had was out of London. In the late 90s, I was on Track Records, and I did a Celtic rock duo with the pretty famous Scottish rock star named Stuart Adamson, who was the lead singer, writer, and lead guitarist for the group Big Country.
Oh, yeah, I know them, yeah.
And he had moved to Nashville. He had been divorced and sort of starting his life over. And we ended up making a record, an acoustic record called our band title, we were the Raphaels, and we did a record called Supernatural. But he died really tragically, took his own life. He's struggled with alcohol and an addiction and a variety of things, actually. And it was so sad and so kind of dark that was, for a while there, I was like, that was it for me. I was sort of done.
Yeah, I'm sure.
By then, I was almost 40 years old myself, and that hit real hard. But it was actually right about that time I decided to write some theater, and do just to change part of it is change the rhythm of my life up a little bit.
Sure.
And was still writing. I was in the sort of the hottest part of my career as a writer, but was having to give up a certain kind of dream. And I had a good buddy of mine, Daryl Scott, who's just one of my dearest friends and co-writers and buddies and musician pals. I don't know if you know his work. It was just one of the best in the world, really. But he'd been through a lot of disappointments, despite an incredible talent he had. I mean, what he's capable of. And I remember him saying to me as a friend, he said, now you get to find out what this is all really about for you, In the midst of what was kind of a depression, I just decided to keep going and started putting out independent records, actually early digital records before everything broke. I had a little digital label called Velvet Armadillo. And
I saw that. That's a cool.
Yeah.
I'm in Texas. Texas animals, the armadillo, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then started writing plays or musicals, and a lot of that was about how do you stay kind of involved. But even then I was already like 40. No, it's a great life. I mean, and keep rocking on your end.
Oh, do you have a great weekend? Are you playing this weekend or are you off this weekend?
I played last night, and I got the next week is going to be real busy. I'm out of town, and I'm doing something with the opera company. I've had these two operas at Nashville Opera, and they're really wacky, and I just love writing. It sounds a little funny to say opera in a way, but so I'll say through composed work. No, I'm not kidding. Let me tell you something.
I understand.
You push yourself as a composer, storyteller, theater person, like the history of what that is, the ancient aspect of storytelling, back to the Greeks, back to,
Oh, yeah.
freedom that playwrights have and the freedom to speak. And then you make yourself do it with music. And it is really fascinating to find out the different ways that you can do that. That journey is a hell of a journey. I mean, I commend it to everybody. I don't commend the business of theater to anyone. It's the worst business in the world. Trying to get to Broadway, the capitalization, the financial levels,
No.
It's really counterproductive for intellectual property in America. But I love theater. The business I find it's kind of unbelievable. I don't know why I keep doing it.
Because you like writing the music.
I guess I love it, on some level, but I don't know.
Well, anyway, I appreciate that. My friend, you have a great weekend.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to be in touch, all right?
Let's do.
All right. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Well, that's it for this episode of The Trout Show. Thanks so much for stopping by. We appreciate it very, very much. And, of course, a very big special thank you to Marcus Hummon for taking time out of his schedule to talk to me about his career, his new music coming out. What a wonderfully talented guy. And, he's quite the mentor to a lot of young people, which just kind of cements the fact that he's just one of those nice guys in the music industry that I love to visit with. For more information about Marcus, you can go to his website, marcushummon.net, or you can check him out on Instagram. This is just his name, one word, Marcus Hummon. That's MarcusHummon on Instagram. So thanks again, Marcus, for your interview. And for more information about The Trout Show, you know what to do. Just go to thetroutshow.com and you can find everything you need to know about The Trout Show, including more podcasts, YouTube videos, my music, and everything that's happening out there in the music industry. So until next time, people, you know what I always say. It's only rock and roll, but I love it. See ya!